Welcome to App Talk with Upptic, where we dig into the nitty-gritty of how to grow apps and games. We speak with industry experts about specific strategies, tools, and tactics used to find success, and we keep you up to date with emerging news and trends in the ever-changing games, marketing, and technology ecosystem. My name is Xander Agosta, Director of Marketing here at Upptic, and joining me today are my co-host,
Warren Woodward, co-founder of Upptic.
And continuing our trend of having two guests, we have
Eric Johnson, or CrypTotoro.
I'm Annie, and we're both from MetaMods.
Awesome. Thank you guys for joining us. We have a really interesting topic, really digging deep into Web3 and how to build communities there, which is a topic we think about a lot at Upptic, and we're really excited to have you guys input on this. Jumping right in, our first segment is Industry Insights, where we do a deep dive on industry news. And as tends to happen, we got a giant news fairy article this morning, and so I'm just going to do a quick rant. So I'll apologize at the top for ranting so much, and then we can go into what that means. So article is a Business Wire article entitled AppLovin Submits a Compelling Non-Binding Proposal to Combine with Unity. Here's a quote from the article. Combination of industry's leading platforms would deliver optimal shareholder value and create an unprecedented full stack solution for developers to create, monetize, measure, and grow games. Comprehensive full stack set of integrated industry leading solutions, including real-time 3D creation tools, analytics, user acquisition, monetization, attribution, and programmatic ad exchange. The scaled operations and cash flow targeting combined run rate revenue of over 7 billion and run rate adjusted EBITDA of over 3 billion by end of 2024, with estimated synergies of over 700 million in EBITDA achieved by 2025. Okay, so a few more notes before I give my take. The Unity CEO, John Ricciello, would become CEO and of the combined business, and Adam, the CEO of AppLovin, will become COO. In order for this deal to go through, the AppLovin merger with IronSource, the Unity merger with IronSource would need to be voided. And the AppLovin guys are kind of clever because they announced this proposal at the same time as they downgraded the outlook for the app/games business, which is just a very clever way of them saying, hey, look over here, don't mind the fact that we're actually a degrading business. And so that's sort of like the facts. And then let me jump into the hot take. Or Warren, do you have anything before I go to my
real
rant?
quick. You mentioned it in passing, but just because like all of this has changed so quickly, if anyone is having deja vu, it's because a couple of weeks ago we were reporting on the Unity IronSource merger.
Right.
And so just to be clear, this is basically AppLovin throwing this proposal out there and saying, hey, don't do this merger, do this instead. And so just wanted to like clarify that for listeners.
Yeah, I did breeze over it. That's an important piece. Okay, so quick hot take, and then we'll go to the panel. So from my perspective, this deal would create the most holistic games infrastructure company I think ever created, with the tooling that literally covers every aspect of games development and publishing. The combined entity would have substantial redundancies and provide a lot of cost savings by cutting redundant teams. And I think specifically the guys who would be worried about is the Unity ad operations team, who has been underperforming and has already had a round of layoffs over the previous months or so. The go-to-market synergies are also pretty substantial. Basically, this team, the sales team, could sell into every single developer, no matter where they are in their life cycle, which I think is a pretty compelling argument for why this is a good idea. And I guess like the main downside is how AppLovin is a fairly aggressive company, and I'm fairly concerned that consolidating so much power into the control of one really aggressive corporate overlord may be long-term net negative for the ecosystem, just because they're going to have so much leverage to consolidate the value generated by games and games marketing into their own coffers and away from everyone else in the ecosystem. But as an AppLovin and Unity shareholder, I mean, I think as a shareholder you have to like it, but as a user, I think maybe less. Okay, well, that was a lot of Xander ranting, so let's cut off there and say, what do you guys think?
Okay, so why is this proposal being thrown out there? And why is AppLovin so keen on the merger with Unity? All the reasons that this could be powerful are basically the same reasons that we were so keen on the potential of the Unity IronSource merger, which is Unity owns all of this first-party game inventory to serve ads because they are the default provider of ads in games built in Unity, which is a massive segment of all games. It's basically just flipping a switch to have Unity be your ad provider. But as Xander alluded to, what they have historically not been great at is running that ad network really efficiently. They've traditionally they've understaffed. It's no slight to the people that work there. Every account manager I've worked with at Unity has been like wildly overworked and understaffed. They have not had as good of sales teams as other ad networks like App11 and ironSource, and they have a notoriously bad algorithm serving their ads and optimizing the revenues for both the games running the ads and people like me and Xander that are buying that ad inventory. So much that they have scapegoated their algorithm in a few of their bad quarters as like a driving factor. So both of these deals have the same upside of you have the two leading experts in in-app monetization with ironSource and App11, basically fighting over this piece of meat that is Unity, that has access to all of this exclusive inventory in games, and both vying to be the dance partner. So yeah, I think there's similar kind of upside in both, and I think this could largely come down to, as you know, Xander, you mentioned like fiduciary duties of like what's just going to be, you know, the sweeter deal for Unity.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it'll be interesting to watch how this develops, and we'll see. We'll keep you guys updated as it goes on. Let's move on to the next article.
This is an article from Cointelegraph up next, and the headline is U.S. Treasury sanctions USDC and ETH addresses connected to Tornado Cash. So before going into what happened, I'm wondering if we can go to our guests, Eric and Annie, if one of you wants to explain what Tornado Cash is at a high level in the concept of like a crypto mixer. I think not everyone in the listener base will be familiar with this concept.
Yeah, so basically, you know, you've got all this on-chain data because of the web technology that it becomes really trackable. You know, all exchanges are basically trackable on Bitcoin and Ethereum, and there are other privacy coins. But when you don't have a privacy coin and you want to kind of both eliminate the history of the coin, what coins have been connected to you, what coins are on your address, they make these services where you can send in your cryptocurrency, and particularly like ETH, and it'll actually change it with a whole host of other. And I always think, like, when I first heard the concept, I was like, oh, it's like Scrooge McDuck, and he has this giant thing of coins, and you throw your coins in and you get a bunch of different coins back. And so it's really just a mixing service in the sense they're mixing up your coins with a pool of other coins, so that the original coins you started with are now not the coins you have, which then detaches the history and where they were on chain before they got to you.
Right.
Yeah, that was a very succinct explanation. Thank you, Eric. And of note, I think a lot of the bad press around crypto being used as a money laundering service, for better or for worse, Tornado Cash and similar services have been at the heart of that, with that ability to add more anonymity to these transactions. Okay, so what actually happened? So the Treasury sanctioned these addresses. So the United States Treasury Department has added more than 40 cryptocurrency addresses allegedly collected to the controversial mixer Tornado Cash to the specially designated nationals list of the Office of Foreign Asset Control. OFAC effectively barred U.S. residents, all U.S. residents of note, from using Tornado Cash, and placed 44 addresses connected to the mixer on its list of specially designated nationals. The department alleged that the individuals and groups had used the mixer to launder more than $7 billion worth of crypto since 2019, including the $455 million stolen by the North Korean affiliated Lazarus Group. And of note, as we've covered before, Lazarus Group is the group that was behind the Ronin bridge hack for our friends at Axie Infinity. One other quote from the article here, despite public assurances otherwise, Tornado Cash has repeatedly failed to impose effective controls designed to stop it from laundering funds for malicious cyber actors on a regular basis and without basic measures to address this risk, said Brian Nelson, Undersecretary of the Treasury for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence. Treasury will continue to aggressively pursue actions against mixers that launder virtual currency for criminals and those who assist them. All right, and one other funny / sad thing that has happened in the wake of this. So basically, it's now illegal for U.S. citizens to use this service, but due to this, due to the way that the service like Tornado Cash adds anonymity to transactions, what is happening now is a bunch of influencers and notable people are basically being sent very small amounts of Ethereum from Tornado Cash, essentially implicating them, since on chain there's no way to discern who was the party that originated that transaction, at least is my understanding. So it's basically, you know, this is a really dangerous ruling on paper, because you could potentially break the law without actually taking any action yourself by receiving funds from these. So Annie, Eric, I would love to go to both of you as being, longtime people in the crypto space for, what do you think of this move from the US government? What does this mean for the future of privacy-centric, mixing services like Tornado Cash, and what do you think is going to be the impact to the crypto ecosystem?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think you've been seeing this for a while now. I think that, there's a new act in the US where it's the Anti-Inflation Act, or a bill that's coming up, and it's hiring, I think they said 87,000 new IRS employees. And I think you're just seeing that the Web3 spaces are being successful, which means that money is flowing in. And I just think that's the nature of government, to kind of really want to make sure that money is what they want to allow, and making sure that they get a cut of it. And so I think you're going to see a lot more tracking, and I think you're going to see this progressive thing of hired more employees to make sure that everybody's paying what they should, and you're going to see a crackdown of the privacy so that every number is accounted for, which is a big, I think is going to become an increasing problem as we move on, because there are a lot of technologies within the Web3 space, within crypto, that I think they're pretty sophisticated. I think the government's going to have a really hard time finding out how, without these, total bans. And that's always going to be a problem, because there's always a way around those bans. So it's kind of a cat and mouse game, I think, to a large degree.
I mean, that's your view on it, and also, but for me, when I read that article about how celebrities are getting trolled, it was like I just started laughing, because it's so funny, but it's also just an easy to be like, this sanction is so absurd. Like, this is a protocol that's made to be decentralized. How exactly are you going to control it? Just like, you make the sanction, okay, now one person, you don't know who it is now sending funds from blacklisted addresses, and how are you going to know who's actually implicated or not? This just shows it so clearly with one simple move.
Right. Yeah. It's like the tools that the government has to address issues in this general category are completely ill-suited for this specific situation.
What I think you're seeing is like an intent, right, from the government, and I think this is to be expected. If you're going to operate within legal jurisdictions, I think you have to expect that the governments within those jurisdictions are going to operate within those jurisdictions and try and provide rules and regulations. I think the fact they can even think to sanction a wallet address shows they're more sophisticated than I had maybe originally anticipated, or they even had been a couple of months ago, or years ago. Sorry. That being said, I think the piece that you guys described about how they're now sending money to random influencers, that obviously shows that the tool set they have is not sufficient. But the reality is they're going to continue to invest it over time. And like, to expect that crypto is going to remain anonymous if you want to operate within the US, just like inside the United States, seems like, I don't know, I wouldn't really bet a lot of money there personally.
Well, let's keep cooking. I know we have a lot to cover today. Xander, what's next on the news?
Yeah, so this one we'll cover kind of briefly, because it's just, we've beat this horse to death, but this is kind of a major development. It's by digiday.com, and it's entitled "Apple is building a demand-side platform." Here's a quote: "Apple is building a demand-side platform if its recent job listings are to be believed. Specifically, it is looking for a senior manager for its DSP in its ad platform's business to drive the design of the most privacy-forward, sophisticated demand-side platform possible. Moreover, the ideal candidate would have experience building mobile-centric DSPs and know-how when it comes to optimizing mobile campaigns using measurement and attribution." So I have an idea of what the implication for this is, but Warren, before I do that, do you want to just really, really briefly explain what a DSP is to anyone in the audience who doesn't know what that is?
Yeah, definitely. So demand-side platform is essentially like the bidding engine that would be connecting to one or more pools of traffic. Typically, it's an aggregator of both first-party and third-party traffic. So the typical DSP will be like that bidding engine that might tap into, any number of disparate pools of ad inventory, and allow you to buy from and optimize your buying from all of those pools of advertising inventory.
Right. So, I mean, clearly, the expansion of Apple's ad network strategy is clearly an expansion of Apple's ad network strategy. And the interesting intent about the way you describe what a DSP is that it allows them potentially to move outside their walled garden into bidding into other ecosystems. And so they have a competitive advantage, right? Because they have first-party data within their ecosystem that they can then use to bid on users and attribute back to their ecosystem in a way which no one else has the visibility. So whatever the intent of Apple's privacy push, the practical effect is they're creating a walled garden with their first-party data. And this is like you could fairly compellingly argue this is an anti-competitive behavior. But I think there's precedent for it, and that's Google. Google basically has unilateral control over the Android ecosystem, and they have better better ability to do bidding on users in that ecosystem. And Apple's intending to recreate this for iOS. And so there's precedent here. It seems like a smart business strategy from Apple, but it's really anti-competitive for everyone else in the ecosystem.
So the impact of this is even more notable on Apple than Google, because due to the new privacy restrictions that we've beaten to the ground for iOS, what this means for anyone buying media on iOS, when you buy from any other non-Apple ad network, your returns as measured directly look really, really bad because you only get a fraction of the users. But if you look at your returns from Apple Search, which is their current advertising offering, those look great. So a non-nuanced take on it can lead at surface level to people thinking that Apple's own ad inventory really overperforms, but there's just a big difference in that they have all the data, so they can show you all of the returns from that. So Apple would have like clear unfair advantage breaking into the DSP space. It's a move they absolutely should do, but it's extremely anti-competitive as well.
Eric, any thoughts?
I actually had a question, because I think this is something that's more in line with your guys' field and your guys' expertise. So I kind of had, you say you've been beating it over and over. I actually had a question for you guys, which is, when we talk about this walled garden, I mean, one of the hurdles, it seems to me, with Apple is that there are plenty of people who've quit that ecosystem because of how walled in they've been. And so I'm wondering from you guys, do you guys view this as something that will increase almost like a resentment about how insular it can be and how not reached out, as well as preventing others from being able to enter in?
Apple's really good at marketing, and they've done a really good job of messaging this as privacy centric. And I think that users who are on Apple, who are not really tuned into how the economics of the ecosystem work, really look at Apple as their white knight. And so I really think from a user perspective, they're going to have the opposite effect, even though they're really robbing from everyone else in the ecosystem and bringing it to themselves. So I would be skeptical, but we'll see.
Well, one area, to your point, Eric, one area where I have seen this having impact is people building Web3 games that they plan on bringing to mobile. A lot of teams are deprioritizing Apple because I don't think it's explicitly because of this policy, but it's kind of from the similar school of thought. Like Apple has been really hesitant to change any of their on-paper policies to better work with like Web3 gamings and ecosystem, and how the economies work in that realm. So some of these isolationist practices of Apple, I think, are moving development resources away from building for their platform.
Really good point.
Yeah, it's just a really interesting idea to me, because as we move more into gaming, I mean, Apple needs to change some things. If they're going to stay insular, they need to change some things about their ecosystem to be more gaming friendly, more connective. I mean, they're going to have to move into NFTs and crypto in order to start playing in this ecosystem. So that'll be.
Yeah, I don't think they think that yet, though. I mean, you could be right. I would take that bet, but I don't think they are, right? They're so used to like unilaterally controlling it.
I think they know they need to. Well, everyone cares less now because there's less, the number go down the last few months. But at least a few months ago, I think Apple was very aware that they need to break into the segment, but not really sure how to kind of steer the battleship to adapt. There's just a lot of different factions within Apple that need to all align to accommodate to a new segment like Web3 gaming. Cool. Well, we have one more story we want to touch on today, and this is our sad mobile industry news of the week. This time it's Jam City in the headline. So mobile developer Jam City lays off staff. Jam City's laid off 17% of its overall staff, amounting to a wave of layoffs impacting well over 100 developers across the company's many studios. Of note, this disproportionately impacted Ludia, which was a studio we reported on that was acquired by Jam City less than a year ago. So over 20% of the staff from Ludia was laid off. For a little more details on this, in a statement provided to VentureBeat, a Jam City spokesperson said the decision to lay off between 150 and 200 employees aims to better position Jam City for long-term growth. The statement points to the current challenging global economy and its impact on the gaming industry as a contributing factor, and adds that its recent acquisitions have forced it to address redundancies with those transactions. Further, in the statement, the spokesperson assures that Jam City remains profitable despite its decision to lay off hundreds of people. Also of note, we reported last December, I think, that Jam City was one of the big legacy mobile developers to kind of plant a flag in Web3. Eric and Annie, I'm not sure if you followed this project, but their first big project in Web3 that they launched was called Champions Ascension. Did either of you happen to track that project, and have you tracked any of Jam City's moves into the Web3 sector?
No.
I haven't.
It kind of had mixed results. There was, I think, a solid marketing push behind it, but this will kind of lead to our main topic. We saw a lot of pushback in the community of how Jam City was managing their Discord and kind of like aggressively kicking people out that had any kind of dissenting opinions. So I think this will kind of bookend nicely to our main topic, because everyone kind of has different assumptions when they enter into Web3 and managing communities for the first time. And there was a lot of what Jam City, I don't think this is directly tied to the layoffs, but just another area that we've been tracking Jam City's moves. Yeah, so it's another week, another major round of layoffs from a titan in the industry. If you are looking to hire for your team and you have the cash right now, it's a really good time to invest in building out your team, because we haven't been hit industry-wide with layoffs like this, I think, any other time in my career, at least. Xander, do you have any thoughts on this latest major layoff?
It's an evolution of the same trend we've seen for the last month or so. I don't think there's anything special about this company. I think everyone's just downsizing in order to make sure that they have a strong balance sheet and are ready for the months and years to come.
Eric and Annie, have you been seeing, we've been reporting more on the traditional gaming layoffs in the space. Have you seen any kind of parallel trends in Web3 gaming developers of either just cutting back on investment or them downsizing teams? Or is it a little too nascent of a space to be impacted the same way?
I think it's a little bit too nascent in this space. What we've really seen it in is more DeFi protocols, because they're the ones that traditionally brought in a lot more money early on and grew very, very big, and now they kind of regret it.
Interesting. That's an interesting call out.
I think one of the things that I see pretty regularly now is there's a big question to where who really had a long-term plan, because you see layoffs like this and you're seeing NFT communities cut back as well. And there becomes a big question of, are they preserving what they have because now the plan has changed, or are they scrambling? And we see, and I think it's probably more so in the NFT communities, you see a lot of scrambling, right, and more of that, wait, what was your plan in the first place? And where did that money go? And how much did you actually know what it takes to build a long-term sustainability? So we are seeing that scrambling.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think on that topic, Xander, do you have any thoughts here before we go to the main topic?
Nothing else.
I was just going to say, I think that's a great segue to kind of digging into this topic of building sustainable and healthy Web3 communities, which we're really excited to dig into with our two guests, Eric and Annie of MetaMods.
Yeah. So let's just, for the beginning, let's just say, you guys talk us a bit about yourselves, your background, what is MetaMods, and what do you guys do there?
So I'm Annie. This is Eric. We actually both met in NeoTokyo. So I can't speak for Eric, but for me, I got into NFTs in 2020.
And what is NeoTokyo, Annie?
NeoTokyo is one of my absolute favorite communities. It was a project that was started by two crypto influencers, more specifically focused on gaming. So Alex Becker and Elio Trades. And one of them is a genius marketer. And really, he just teased everybody into going like, hey, I'm going to start this NFT project. It's going to be big. Everybody who's going to come inside, they're going to be a builder. They're going to be intelligent. They're going to want to do things. And it worked. Like, I was one of those people who spent 3 weeks not sleeping, trying to figure out a riddle and how do I mint this NFT? How do I get into this community? And this is actually where I met so much of my network. So this is where Eric and I both came from. We got into NeoTokyo. We met all these amazing people. I had first bought my NFT in 2020, and it was sandbox land. I bought like a few estates, and ETH was $300. And it's not the most inspiring story, but I really got into it because I live in Hong Kong. And at one point I was reading Hacker Noon and thinking, oh, look, there's a metaverse. I won't be able to afford property in Hong Kong. And also you can't, because technically you only rent it from the government. So I might as well do a punt and try to do it for virtual land. So that was my start. And then I got into NeoTokyo a year or so later, maybe a year and a half later, and I met Eric. And around that time, I had quit my job to fully go into NFTs. And I remember looking at Eric and going, I'm going to pitch you this idea, because right now we're in Web3. It's a bear market. I'm meeting all these people where they don't love their jobs. There's so much opportunity in Web3. how do we create something for the community, like for the people who I am talking to every single day, where they can do something that's basically akin to what we're doing already. We're all on Discord all the time. We're all looking up crypto gaming. We're all looking up Web3. We're all communicating with everybody. How do we make this monetizable so people can live the life that they really want?
Eric, you want to share a little about your background and what led you to starting this with Annie?
Yeah.
Well, and also, can you guys in part of that maybe talk a little bit about what exactly MetaMods is for the audience who might not know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll jump into those. Yeah, I was in cryptocurrency when I first heard the idea we could have an internet money that was, backed by itself. I thought this is great. 2013, probably. 2012. I was hearing about it. I was really interested. I didn't much think of it as an economic vehicle for my own gains yet. I was just really into the technology, and so I just kept following it. Bought some so I could see how it worked, and then around, in this last like 2020-ish. I started to really notice that, as DeFi especially started to come in, a lot more legacy, larger financial things, and the spark of newness was a little bit lacking for me. And then meanwhile, this NFT things start showing up, and it starts to remind me again of those early development days where everybody's just making and trying to find uniqueness. And at first it was like, okay, these are pictures, and then it's like, whoa, kind of utilities. Oh, ownership, community ownership. And suddenly I start to get really interested in that. And that's really what I've been in this last little while. And then, yeah, when NeoTokyo came along and a gamified membership where you had to game it to become owners of the thing, I love that part of NeoTokyo. And so sure enough, I jumped in there, and I still have, I really, really enjoy NeoTokyo as a community. I think they're some of the most heavy builders right now, really underestimated for how much is being built inside. But since then, I've also learned about how diverse communities can be and how valuable they are for their very own rights. Some of these art communities are just pleasant to be in, really cool stuff being made, really engaging. And so that's what I love about Discord. And that's one of the things that really got me into Discord as part of the NFT space, was how diverse of cultures you can get. Because I come from a background where I studied in cybernetics and systems. So business, how systems relate within business. And I actually studied along with what family therapy is and how communication works with many organizational systems or family member systems. And so when Annie came and pitched me this idea of, oh, hey, we need, everybody's in here all the time, and that we need moderators for these communities. And that is actually making the experience so much more pleasant. She basically pitched the idea of MetaMods, and MetaMods being, we're an agency that supplies for projects that are either up and coming or projects that have been around for a while, specifically usually it's all within Discord, but it tends to be, our businesses tend to center towards NFTs, which means the mint launch and all that goes with that, or just sustainable community long-term. And we supply mods into those communities, and those mods are responsible for branding. They're responsible for communicating branding to the community relationships, and really keeping the glue between the project and a community, which now, given Discord, given the Web3 space, when we say community, we actually mean the culture of the project. I don't think you can get away nowadays in Web3 with just giving your audience the culture. Now they help create it. And so that is where suddenly mods become, in my opinion, very relevant. And you need mods who know what they're doing, good, healthy mods who like relationship and want a community that's sustainable. And so that's kind of where we came, and we agreed really heavily on that, that healthy communities are something we really wanted to keep building. And then we've been doing that since.
Yeah, and on that topic of culture and communities, Annie, we'll go to you in just a sec, but I just wanted to add in that, like, the same community that Eric and Annie referenced of NeoTokyo, that's actually how I met the two of them as well. And they set a really interesting precedent by not having it be a community you could join initially from purchasing anything. You just had to like solve these riddles and kind of do these ridiculous quests and decode things. So it creates a very interesting kind of like self-selection of who will be part of that community. And that kind of became entrenched in the DNA of that community to make it more about this culture of solving problems and building versus more of these speculative or just like collection focused communities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, because I think more than ever, we're seeing that the interaction a community has will build the culture that they also have.
Right. Annie, you were saying?
Oh, and I was saying like that is I think how they did it was the example of like the best marketing in the world. They got the people they what they wanted to, because the network inside NeoTokyo is unparalleled.
One thing that I think is interesting about the scope of work that you just talked about with MetaMods, Eric, and I'd love for you to both expand on this. If we think just, for Upptic, we kind of focus on gaming across platforms and gaming segments. And when you traditionally think of what a mod is in gaming, it's much more like reactive and limited scope than what you're describing with MetaMods. Can we maybe just like double tap on that and talk about what is different and why is the role of a mod in a Web3 community different from the role of a mod in a traditional gaming community?
Sure, absolutely. I think part of the reason why it's very different is one, how it starts, right? MetaMods came because I was in Seneca's 333 server talking to founders all the time. And also, I was part of an investment group, which means I'm always talking to projects. And when we get to the question is, hey, how can we help? The one thing I always heard was, well, we could use help with marketing, and we could also use help with community management. So that's one thing that's different, right? It really came from a customer pain point that was already there. And and when you're addressing a pain point that you know already has a market, you have to be very proactive. Like these are other businesses where they're making money from it. They're handling other people's finances, but also their emotional ties to your project. So then you have to start thinking ahead, like, okay, what did I sell to these people? What are they expecting of me? What did I promise? And whenever you have anybody attached to your team, then you have to start thinking, how do we communicate this to them? When they're expecting this, can I react this way? How should I communicate what our value is? Where do I draw the line? If everybody can come into our community because we're very inclusive, how do I draw the line where we're still very inclusive, but we have to think, okay, if someone is coming in and they don't fit our culture, can we talk to them? Can we make them understand that like they have very good feedback and to bring it into our community rather than exclude another person. And these are not things that normal businesses ever have to think about, because you might, when you do say traditional marketing, right, you might get very quantitative measures, but you don't get these qualitative feedback that is just so instantaneous when you're in a Discord and talking to people.
Right. And one thing, I think you touched on this in passing, Annie, but one thing that we've seen with Web3 communities is this dynamic of we're focused on gaming, but the dynamic of like the player owner versus just someone who's a consumer or just a player. It kind of sets a different level of expectations of what is owed to them from the project builder or developer as far as like transparency and meeting their needs and requests. Like, is that a general trend that you've seen as well in the Web3 space?
Yeah, absolutely. And it all ties back to how a lot of projects are pitching themselves. A lot of people will come and they might have angel funding from friends and family or themselves, and then they'll sell an NFT collection basically to raise the funds. So effectively anybody who buys is very much a shareholder. And that really creates the emotion of like, okay, not only am I attached to this, I have so many ties to this, emotional, financial, and because I can talk to the founders, I am allowed to give my opinion and they should listen to me. They should listen to my feedback.
Yeah, well, so I really want to dig deep into that sort of component where you talk about what are some tactics that you use to cultivate that engagement. But I have a question for you guys first, just about the business. What is your business model, and like what's your ideal customer? You talk about NFTs. I'm curious, like as far as MetaMods as a business, what is your guys' business model?
Yeah, our business model is really healthy, sustainable, long-term communities. And so there's, for example, I'll use an alternate view, is that there are some people who it is a marketing campaign. The Discord is a marketing campaign. They're going to have it for the time they're going to mint an NFT, or they're going to have a release event, or some big thing is coming, and they're opening up shop. And then when that thing's done, they're going to close up shop. And our model is actually set more on what it means to build a long-term sustainable, which has a lot to do with reciprocity of relationship, where a community feels heard and responded to, and the project feels they have a community that's responsive and involved and engaged. That is monetary, and that's also relational.
Right.
And so ideal customers are individuals looking to build a long-term community in the space. And that can be under a lot of, that may be under NFT, that may just be under gaming, but when one wants what I consider just a really healthy quality relationship, where they can rely for good feedback, there's a certain amount of non-toxicity that has to happen between a project and its community in order for that to be a productive relationship. And so creating productive relationships for long-term, anybody who's interested in doing that on the Discord platform, that's our jam.
I'll also add our ideal customer has good marketing because we have to work so closely with them. One is growth, and we are more in retention and engagement. There's nothing to retain if there isn't any growth.
So just getting really nitty gritty. So it's predominantly a services function. Do you guys have any technology that goes along with it? And then in addition to that, sort of, is it like a monthly subscription that people are paying you, or how exactly does that whole operations work?
Yeah, well, we have basically, we do package subscriptions, but we realize, I mean, this goes back a little bit, but it'll come forward, which is one of the huge advantages in having a community that's engaged is you have a workforce that cares about your product. And we have this problem where we want to hire somebody who likes our company, who wants to work for us. Well, in some ways, with Discord and with these communities, you have people who already believe in your idea. The problem is usually they're not trained. So they can step into things, but so part of what MetaMods is seeking to do is try to combine those. So we actually offer our mods to come in, and some of the packages we call training packages. And we'll come in from 3 to 6 months to not only build the community, but help train people from within that community to start to take on roles of actually running the community.
That's really cool.
Yeah, very interesting.
One reason I really like that approach, you know, a lot of times we don't do here at Upptic, we focus on the growth part of gaming. We don't do any sort of like community management or modding. And I'm constantly telling teams that are looking to outsource this, like, this is the lifeblood of your game, of your project. Like, don't just jump to outsourcing this and trying to do this the lowest cost way. Like, this should be core to your team. But with a solution like MetaMods, like, you're also saying like, hey, we'll teach you how to fish so you can own this internally.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm really enthusiastic about it. So if I talk too much about it, you say so, but I'm really enthusiastic about it because I think we all know that help desks, where we go as customers, I mean, it's getting less and less we get to talk to a person, less and we end up in these automated, the more sophisticated AI, we get fed something that's very non-relational. And I just think that's a really big opportunity to strengthen the relationship and the humanity between customer and their product.
Yeah. So if we get tactical about, you sort of talked it on broad strokes about what it is your company does. Can we get sort of tactical about what are some of the best practices for cultivating and maintaining a healthy Web3 community?
Yeah, definitely is when people come in, what is the vision of the entire server? What are we all doing here? Because in a bear market or when your pre-mint's like building up to the mint, it's super easy because people are focused on, well, how do I get this? But then what happens afterwards, right? People have your NFT, you might be releasing something, but maybe you don't release it fast enough because this space is all about novelty. It really helps when people go, I know exactly why I'm here and why I want to talk to the people. Like, where's the vision? What are we doing together? So that would be more the strategic overlook that I think a lot of communities can focus on, because it can't just be about your NFTs, it's what do you stand for?
Yeah. And I think that clarity, and that's I really glad you brought that up, Annie, because it's really that clarity and vision. And then the next step is, how does that vision get shared? Because you can have an excellent dev team who's working their ass off. You can have a project that's working their ass off, but if they can't get that over in a consistent way, the community gets really confused. And so you need a lot of connective tissue in there so that the products that are being built and the work that's being done can be communicated effectively and on consistent timing. One of the things that is probably most important about the nitty-gritty of what's done is consistent AMAs, consistent development. Those are so important to a community because it lulls them into trust. And you want trust in your community. And for me, a lot of the qualities of a community is much what we would think of as a culture. Trust, frequent check-ins, hard work, these kinds of things. The important part is making sure they're known when they're done so that everybody can be on the same page, the same way you'd have a team meeting.
Yeah, that's really interesting and actionable for the audience.
Yeah, I would add one more thing is when not being afraid of conflict management, as in it shouldn't be someone comes in and they start fudding, or at least you feel they're fudding and then you ban them. It should be, how am I talking to you so that you're willing to put aside your anger for a moment and then tell me what it is that bothers you and the problem so we can get working on it together. And then you bring that person over to your side so they can become someone who is against you and then eventually becomes, okay, I've worked with this team. I actually really like them and I can stand for them now.
Yeah, I'm again gonna jump. Me and Annie see things very similar. So I always like when I hear her talks, I'm like, yeah, that's totally how I feel. Is that I'd say one of the biggest mistakes I see projects do with their community is they're so concerned about the negativity that two things happen. One, they start centering on the negativity instead of the positivity, which will drive their smart, pulled back community members out of their community, and they don't realize it. All the drama starts to become the most important thing, and all their really loyal base starts to go, this is too much work to be in. So one, I think really managing those that what we might consider like toxic comments. And then the other part is just not making those people allies. The people with the biggest mouths in your community, they're giving you criticism, and they're giving you criticism because for some reason they think they should be staying. So figuring out how to find a resource for really incorporating those criticisms, some of the best communities, most productive with their communities, do that really well.
Makes sense. Another area I wanted to unpack with both of y'all is, I understand that your team also supports the projects that you work with on partnerships. And if you can elaborate a little bit more on the, just kind of clarifying for your team, what does that mean to do, partnerships with other Web3 projects, and why you see that as a related area of work?
Yeah, I'm really hoping, Annie, you jump in here because you've done a really good job at thinking about the difference between partnerships within gaming and NFT spaces versus two companies just teaming up. So I'd like to hear from you on that.
Yeah, I would say collaborations is kind of a gray area actually in between Discord and community management, and this actually highlights how closely these two functions have to work together. Is partnership is, say, one project will go to one that's coming up and is about to have a mint and say like, hey, I think we have very similar values, we might have the same audience segment, can we like get some whitelist, bring it over to our community so our community can learn about you, and also we can provide some extra value to our own people. And that's usually very much a win-win. And this is where it gets a little gray because this is very much marketing, right? You are spreading the word. This is a growth tactic. But it's also very community management because you are benefiting both sides here in a way that is internal to Discord and teaching your like basically expanding the minds of your members of like what is available in this space, and you're keeping them up to date on it. So
yeah, absolutely. You touched on a good point here, Annie, that like this is a gray area between community and marketing. And similarly to how I said, like Upptic focused on growth doesn't touch traditional modding and community management. We have really doubled down on partnerships marketing for our Web3 clients because it is such a, our kind of history is more in like paid performance style marketing, but that's a really horrible way to market to very enfranchised Web3 users and players. So for our earlier stage Web3 clients, we don't recommend really any or very minimal paid advertising, and we really just focus on these organic partnerships with other communities. And it's very different from traditional marketing because you have to come from how can we add value to your community to get you to partner with us. So this means like giving them things. Sometimes it's a thing. Sometimes this is providing time. You mentioned like founder AMAs, like that will be the game teams we work with will get them to say, hey, can we get you guys to agree to do 10 founder AMAs to like 10 of the communities we think have the highest overlap. And you have to give something in return for expecting them to help for their member base to join your project and to help organically spread the word about the project. So it's a very different dynamic from the more kind of transactional paid marketing and even like things like paid influencer marketing.
It is. And I think it's very unique to Web3, and I personally love it because now you take something that has become basically a tool where you just go for paid ads and then look at the numbers of impressions or engagement, and then you go from what is your network, who do we know, who can we talk to, and that's very much the lifeblood of Web3 in general.
What are some key takeaways? What are any last takeaways you have for someone who's really trying to nurture and grow a Web3 community?
Especially for first timers, if it's your first Web3 community that you're trying to build.
Well, I'll just say right off the bat, go into some different communities and start talking, because you're going to find pretty quickly when a space feels good to be in or not good to be in. It's not hard to get the temperature of a Discord. It's actually pretty easy. Any layperson can see the comments and kind of just see what's been going on. The other thing is to look at the organization and order of the aesthetics. A well-built Discord should feel easy to use. Discord actually has quite a bit of things you can manipulate to make it look natural. Channels, the emojis that go with channels, as well as then we're talking about bots on the back end and things you can do to make it architecturally look like a curated space. And you want that because that's really the enjoyment and dopamine that goes past just words. You don't want to have a Discord just full of words. You want a lot of like shiny lights, as I kind of call them, because a Discord should pop to you. And that's actually designable. So that's kind of like my first thing is go look at some ones that you enjoy being in and ask yourself, what are the qualities you're enjoying? It's like first thing. And you have some?
That's great. Annie, any other tip that you'd like to add?
That was actually pretty much it. Like, make a list, like a very clear list of everything, and then also go into some smaller Discord communities yourself, get involved, get to know people, because as you're building, you're going to need people on your side who like you and trust you.
Yep.
And so when you actually start building, you'll have people to talk to about it, to give you feedback, and also to join you as you go along.
Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for talking about that. Really appreciate that wrap up and deep dive. We're going to do a lightning round of app of the week because we have a few minutes left, and we'll start with Warren. Warren, do you have an app this week?
Yeah, mine's one worth a deep dive, but we won't be doing that today. So I started messing around with Noom, which is like the kind of psychology-driven weight loss app the last few weeks. My partner was testing it out, and she was having speaking really, really highly of it. I was like, I could stand it to lose a few pounds, even though I've never been someone to really go on a diet. But it's actually a really fascinating app, super well designed. And if anyone is interested in sort of general health optimization, recommend checking it out. Xander, do you have an app?
I do. So my app this week is sort of random. It's last week you told that your app of the week was Dicey Dungeon, and I went to try and download it, and I accidentally downloaded the wrong game, and I downloaded a game called Dicey Elementalist instead. And I played it for a while, and that's pretty good. And I downloaded Dicey Dungeon, it wasn't as good. And so my app this week is Dicey Elementalist. If you want like a reasonably entertaining sort of stupid free-to-play mobile game, recommend checking out Dicey Elementalist.
Got it. Eric, Annie, did either of you bring an app that you want to give a shout out to this week?
Mine is Shift. So I work for a VC as my day job. Then I have MetaMods, and then I have Spectre, which is a decentralized VC. And oh my God, it's just so many programs across 2 different phones and a laptop. So what Shift does is I can put all of my Telegrams, all of my WhatsApp, my Jira board, all my Trello boards, my Notion, all of it literally in one app, and it consolidates it. And I can put it into separate folders for each different project too. It's amazing.
Oh, that sounds great. I need that in my life ASAP.
Yeah.
Try shift.com. Cool. Eric, what about you?
I got 2. I got PlayOnMac, which is a game that lets you run wineskin games. I run a Mac, and so I can play Windows games, and it's a more seamless version of Wine and Wineskin. You can just run stuff a little easier. So PlayOnMac is probably like that's what I've been rocking this week. And then otherwise, like Little Snitch. Like every time I open up my computer, I'm so happy to see Little Snitch. That's my other app. You guys familiar with that, Little Snitch? Oh, it basically monitors all outgoing traffic and ingoing traffic from your computer so that you have a say on what your computer is communicating and how much it communicates. So
this looks awesome. I'm going to check that one out. Awesome. Okay, we're at time. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Really interesting. If someone wants to get a hold of either of you or check out MetaMods or other projects, how can they do that?
We have a website. It's metamods.agency. That's basically what we're MetaMods. We're a Discord agency, and so hopefully it's memorable to everybody.
Awesome. Thank you both for making the time to join us today. And definitely recommend anyone who's trying to do healthy, sustainable community engagement to reach out to the MetaMods team. They're both awesome people. And as always, the episode today was brought to you by the fine folks here at Upptic. Here at Upptic, we focus on all things games growth in both traditional and Web3 games. So if you need help with any of that stuff, feel free to reach out to us. The website is the best way at upptic.com. That's upptic.com.
Awesome. Talk soon.